I get to share some new information with you, which is wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen here and get our slides started. One moment, please. All right. So again, thanks to everybody for being here. We're really glad to have you here. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Recollection Wisconsin and how it works for both users and content partners, folks who are contributing to Recollection Wisconsin. Feel free to pop questions in the chat as you have them. And Andy will bring them to our attention if there's a good spot for it in the presentation. But we're also going to leave a good amount of time at the end for questions too. So let's just do some quick introductions first. I'm Kristen Whitson. I'm a digital specialist and consortia manager with WiLS, which is Wisconsin Library Services. So I'm assigned to work on several different projects, but one of those consortia that I help manage along with Andy Coffin, who's here, and Nick Smith is another one of our team members. We work on Recollection Wisconsin as one of the main projects. And then Tamara?
So, hello, I am Tamara. I am the digitization consultant for the South Central Library System, and I help our member libraries with their local history digitization projects. And I'll be following up on what Kristen says today, giving you some examples of the workflows that our libraries use to get their content into Recollection Wisconsin.
Thanks, Tamara. Tamara's like a Recollection Wisconsin super user, so I wanted you all to be able to hear from her and her experiences. So some of you might be familiar with Recollection Wisconsin, but I'm going to start for a little bit with a brief overview, and I apologize if it's a repeat for some of you. I want to make sure we're all starting from the same place. So Recollection Wisconsin brings together digital cultural heritage resources from Wisconsin libraries, archives, museums, and historical societies, and shares them with the world. So that's sort of the basic mission. And what that really means, and what we're going to talk about today, is that Recollection Wisconsin guides Wisconsin organizations, community orgs, historical societies, libraries, through the process of bringing their historical collections online. We aggregate them and we share them with the world through the Digital Public Library of America. I'm going to explain what all that means. It's a lot. So you know that Recollection Wisconsin doesn't hold those resources. Like, we don't have a server really somewhere that is full of everybody's digital items. We don't have boxes of items. Instead, what we do is harvest the resource metadata, and we point users back to the home organization to view that resource and explore the collection. And I'm going to demonstrate what that looks like. So that also means that one of our main jobs, one of our primary roles, is to elevate those historical materials that our partners are contributing and caring for. To the end user, what this looks like is a single collection of more than 700,000 historical resources. I just checked a couple days ago. It was 727,981 metadata records. And those are in a myriad of formats: photos, maps, books, artifacts, oral histories, letters, postcards, all of those things. And they're used by researchers and students and teachers and genealogists, curious folks from all over. The collection is an aggregation of historical content from 259 organizations across the state. So those kinds of organizations include kind of what you might think of as the obvious ones: libraries of all types, archives, historical societies, museums. But we've also got collections from government agencies, from community organizations. So we're really glad to have a wide variety of sources there. Those 259 organizations contribute 434 collections. And most of those are state and local history focused, but some of our larger content partners like UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee contribute materials from across the country and around the world. One of our local content partners, the Southwood County Historical Museum, has this great photo of a person on a cow. And, you know, Andy and I think, find a lot of really delightful treasures in Recollection Wisconsin on a regular basis. That's one of the most fun parts about doing these presentations, I think, is finding the images to go along with them. So Recollection Wisconsin is the DPLA, or Digital Public Library of America, service hub in our state, which means that it serves as the pathway or the pipeline for Wisconsin libraries, archives, museums to contribute their collections to DPLA. And I'm gonna show you what this means. So all of this content that comes into DPLA comes through Recollection Wisconsin. And most of the states in the country, and sometimes like a collaboration of a few states, have some kind of hub, DPLA hub in their state. So there's a version of Recollection Wisconsin in about like 35 or 40 other states. DPLA aims to amplify the value of libraries and cultural organizations as Americans' most trusted resource of shared knowledge. So that's a tall order. We do this by collaborating with a national network of partners to make millions of materials from libraries, archives, museums, and other cultural institutions across the country available to everyone in a one-stop discovery experience. And through the DPLA level of the searching, there are about 44 million items to discover. I bet it's more now since the last time I checked. Photos, maps, books, manuscripts, audio recordings. And those come from 4,000 content partners, libraries, archives, museums across the country. And the DPLA portal also includes materials from major repositories like the Smithsonian, National Archives, but also all kinds of smaller localized collections. And all this serves our content partners here in Wisconsin by giving their unique historical materials a broader audience and another discovery pathway. That was a lot of information, and I want to show you what that looks like. So we're going to switch over here to Recollection Wisconsin, the Recollection Wisconsin website. I'm going to search here for Wisconsin Dells, which is a pretty common, geographically oriented vacation destination type of search that we would get in Recollection Wisconsin on a regular basis. So here's what the results are from Recollection Wisconsin. These are just within our state, from contributors within our state. And we have 692 results for Wisconsin Dells. You can see here there's a lot of results from the University of Wisconsin digital collections. That's really common. They have huge collections. If we want to see who else the materials are coming from, we can look at the contributing institution here. So for instance, if somebody is in Wisconsin Dells specifically, and they just want to see what's coming from at the public library in the Wisconsin Dells, we can limit by that contributing partner. And you'll see that that library, which is in the South Central Library System, by the way, so this is in Tamara's system, they have 269 items related to the Wisconsin Dells that are in here. So let's say you have, a fourth grader who's doing some research on Wisconsin Dells, and these are the items that they can pull up. There's recordings, there are just all kinds of items in here, okay? Just as a side note for anybody who hasn't used Recollection Wisconsin before, there's a bunch of other great filtering options like searching by rights status, depending on what you want to use it for, searching by the type of the item, date, subject, all kinds of things. And you can also see other contributing institutions that have contributed these items to Recollection Wisconsin. Okay, so 692 results here, and I want to show you now what happens if we go to the Digital Public Library of America and do that same search and why it matters. So up here at the national level, we see there's like 400 more results for Wisconsin Dells. And you can see that those same items that we just saw on the narrowed search at Recollection Wisconsin come up, all these ones from the University of Wisconsin digital collections. If we look here at the contributing institutions, that same, public library in Wisconsin Dells, those items come up. But there's also some from outside of Wisconsin, like this photography collection at the New York Public Library, the University of Michigan libraries, University of California in Riverside. There's information from the Museum of Photography. So let's look at this. This is a photo collection at the New York Public Library that did not come up when we just searched in Recollection Wisconsin. And there's this whole photo collection of these items they're called stereographs, which I know because I looked at this before we did this webinar. And when you click through to the full item, you see that the New York Public Library Digital Collections has these images of Wisconsin dells that is right here in Wisconsin, but you never would have seen that if you're only searching at Recollection Wisconsin. So when you're searching at the Digital Public Library of America level, you get to see items on your search topic that come from all over the country for reasons that we don't even know. If you look through this, there's not a lot of information about why the Miriam and Ira D. Wallach Division of Art Prints and Photographs has these stereographs of the Wisconsin dells. But there they are at the New York Public Library. And so if somebody's researching the Wisconsin dells, this is a whole nother layer of fantastic information for a researcher. I also want to point out here that in DPLA, in Recollection Wisconsin, and then also in DPLA, when a researcher clicks here on View Full Item, it takes them to the original content partner's item. So that means that the content partner gets the traffic, the website hits for this item for researchers who are coming through. And that's a good way of explaining how Recollection Wisconsin does what it does, which is that we're really an access point, a one-stop shop for discovery. But not only do we not hold the digital items, we pass the traffic statistics right off to the content partner, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pause there for questions since I'm on DPLA and Recollection Wisconsin. Does anybody have any questions about that search experience or how it works?
I have a question that might come up later with
Yeah.
since all of this data is being housed by the institution, what are ways that institutions like, a technical college in Wisconsin, what are the options that we could have to house all this data? So if that's coming up later, I'll just be quiet right now.
It's a fantastic question, and I do have the answer to it later. And so you are future focused. That's perfect. Thank you. I think I'll get into that. And then, if anybody comes up with questions, just stop me. So I tell you all that to explain why it is that 259 content partners contribute their historical resources to Recollection Wisconsin. In each state, there's also some kind of governing body for those service hubs, and sometimes they're at a university, and sometimes they're community-focused organizations like ours. In our case, we have 6 organizations that are on our governing board that make some of the major decisions, sort of like fiscal responsibility types of decisions for Recollection Wisconsin. And then we have 13 members of our steering committee that help guide collection growth and maintenance. And then when we have questions about how to reach out to the educator community, K-12 educators, we have several members of an education advisory committee that we reach out to. So that means that we really have 2 sides to our work. The one side, on the collection side, is amplifying the collections that our content partners contribute. So like Wisconsin technical colleges and libraries and archives and museums. Our job is really to amplify all 727,000 items that we have in the Recollection Wisconsin Discovery port. And that can include things like digital exhibits, educator resources, primary source sets, doing outreach to publicize the collections. And then on the other side, we have practitioner support. So for folks like Rachel and others who might want to digitize and then have a place to put their items, we have done things like put together a digital readiness toolkit, which has a ton of resources from start to finish, project planning worksheet, all kinds of things. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. We have helped support digitization kits, which Tamara is going to talk about, at several library systems. We put on workshops when we can. We're here for advice, and we have written some case studies. Honestly, I think I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure this is the case. We wish that we could like digitize and upload everything for everybody. And unfortunately, that's just not super possible or feasible. And so instead, we just try to pass that knowledge on to content partners so that they're able to do this on their own and build their own digitization and uploading and sharing workflows as much as possible. So let me tell you how this happens. And this is both kind of a simplistic and a little bit of a technical explanation. And Rachel, this is the answer to your question. So all of the material has to be hosted somewhere. The metadata and the item have to be hosted somewhere. That means they need to sit on a server somewhere so that we can go in and harvest the metadata, put it in Recollection Wisconsin, and feed it up to DPLA. And there's two different options for that. If there's a content partner that has the ability to do that on their own with both storage space and a content management system, they can do that on their own. And I'll give you an example. There's a couple of library systems in Wisconsin that have a content management system called ResCarta. And so like Winnifox Library System has this, Prairie Lakes Library System. They host and store all of that material on their own instance of ResCarta. So all we have to do at Recollection Wisconsin is go get the metadata and add it to our aggregation once a quarter. The other option, if an organization doesn't have that ability or the tech support for that or the storage space, is that we offer in partnership with the Milwaukee Public Library a content management system called Content DM and some storage space. And this is an option that South Central Library System uses, several other library systems use. And this is free of charge to the content partners. We teach you essentially how to put digitized materials into that content management system, Content DM, and then that's where we go harvest the metadata from instead of your own content management system. Does that make sense? I know it's light on details, but let me know if you have questions about that. Sounds great. Okay, good. Wonderful. And there's tons more details to that, but that's the big picture of how the materials actually come online with Recollection Wisconsin. So because we can't do all of the digitizing and uploading for everybody, we try to provide as much easy to access information as we possibly can. And that really takes the form of the digital readiness toolkit that we've put together over years and years of hearing questions from content partners and potential content partners. And I think Andy just shared the link in the chat. Please feel free to take a look at this. There's a ton of really good information in there, and it's written in a way that is accessible. It's not like highly technical jargon. It's written for folks who have never done this before. It is large, it is searchable, but it is a lot of information. And so if there's anything you're looking for that you can't find, please feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to help you get your questions answered. So it has guidance from everything starting with a project planning section and a project planning worksheet that is super, super helpful. It's a great way to start any digitization project. And you can be at any stage of a digitization project before you start this project planning worksheet. It's just a really good way internally to figure out the nitty-gritty things on your own that are things like, where are we going to store all of these digital files and what are we going to name them? What's our naming convention? What's our inventory system going to be like? And on through all the stages of a project. That worksheet and the toolkit include things like obtaining permissions, not just copyright, although there's a ton of information about figuring out copyright in there too, but also sort of appropriate and ethical permissions. So things you should reconsider before you put online, like pictures of minors, for instance, or any personally identifiable information, or if there are images of Native partners in your community or Native ceremonies or Native people, have you consulted with the Native folks in your area to get permission to share those things? And there's tons of information about permissions in the toolkit. There's digitizing best practices, so examples of like workflows, Here's some scanners you should consider. There's a whole section on recommended equipment for digitization. There's metadata guidelines. There's templates that you can borrow and use on your own. There's options for sharing. So not just with Recollection Wisconsin, but if there's other content management or sharing options you want to use. There's even a whole section on evaluation, like evaluating, did your project do what you wanted it to do? So take a look at the toolkit and please feel free to reach out with questions about the toolkit or if you're not finding what you're looking for in the toolkit. But there's a ton of guidance in there, and that's a lot of what we do and direct people towards when they're interested in starting a digital project. It is not uncommon for us to get the question of how much does all of this service cost? And the great thing is, just last year in last budget, in the last budget cycle, the state of Wisconsin funded us for the biennium, and we hope for the foreseeable future. From what we understand, once you're in the budget, it's easy to stay in the budget. So that's very exciting. And so as long as the state funding continues, we don't intend to charge content partners or the state for this service. The state government is covering it, which I think is as it should be because it's a state service. I will say, though, that every 2 years, there's a advocacy process where we kind of remind the state legislature of our value and that they should continue to fund us. And so if you come across stories or you have experiences that really kind of demonstrate the value of Recollection Wisconsin to you, to your community, we're always looking for those stories. So please feel free to send those along to us. And we may well be using them when we go back to the state legislature in early 2025 and say, remember us, we're a great investment. Here's an example of the great investment that we are for you. But $0 for this service and $0 for the hosting with Milwaukee Public Library. Recollection Wisconsin pays for that with some of our state funding so that we can provide the service to you all for free. So in the last joint governance meeting, excuse me, with our board and our steering committee, our governance structures, governing bodies tasked us with 4 sort of strategic directions going forward for 2023 and 2024. And these are those 4 main directions. And I tell you this so that you know kind of what we're working on and where our efforts are being targeted. One of the main ones that we're working on is targeting outreach to areas of the state that don't have organizations in those areas or those counties that are contributing to Recollection Wisconsin. And, you know, the big organizations, UW-Madison, UW-Milwaukee, the State Historical Society, they've already got digitization and sharing through Recollection Wisconsin done. That's easy for those large organizations. We're now at the point where we're looking at the smaller organizations who really need some help to overcome those barriers to participation. And we have a solution for that, one of several solutions, which I'll talk about on the next slide. We've also been asked to do some foundational discussions and some documenting for the Recollection Wisconsin Consortium. So Recollection Wisconsin itself has been around for 10 or 11 years, and then there was a precursor organization. But in all that time, we weren't able to really take the time to focus on foundational things like a mission and vision and values. We've been living those things, a mission and vision and values, and you know, sort of directions to go forward with, but they haven't been operationalized in a really formal process. So we're just actually wrapping up that process in the next month or two, and I'll be excited to share mission and vision and values with everybody once that's all done. But it's been a really interesting and I think clarifying process to say, here's how we've been living this work for the last decade or more, and putting it down on paper to say, and this is how we're going to go forward in the future. We are training stakeholders to be ambassadors for Recollection Wisconsin, meaning that like not all content partners or researchers really understand the value of what it is that we have to offer. I think there's content partners who have forgotten that they have collections in Recollection Wisconsin, and we really want to help those folks share and do outreach with the great collections that they have in Recollection Wisconsin. So we've got some work ahead of us on that kind of training outreach program. And then lastly, we're working on updating our metadata guidelines to meet best practices in description. So we at Recollection Wisconsin have pretty minimal requirements for metadata that come in with the digital items. And we don't really tell folks beyond some minimum requirements how to write their metadata, but we can provide a lot of advice. And I think part of the service that we offer is doing what we're doing right now, which is recommending what best practices are. And that this is going to include meeting with community groups who have not always been consulted on how they would like to be represented in metadata. So Black Wisconsinites or Hmong Wisconsinites or Native Nations in Wisconsin, how would they like to be described in the metadata that is written by our content partners? So we've got that coming up in the next year and a half. And so that's pretty exciting. The last thing I'm going to tell you about is just our Recollection Wisconsin digitization initiative. And this is like the big push we're doing for this year, which is that we're putting in place a program to match student interns with organizations to do the digitization and description work. We are paying the student interns. We're doing a pilot this year, fall 2024, spring 2025, and summer 2025. And as long as it goes well and we continue to have state funding, we intend to continue the program going forward. We've got funding for about 10 students and 10 host sites this year. In the fall, we have 3 of them that have already been matched up, but those we're taking applications on an ongoing basis for that. So I bet, yep, Andy just put the link in the chat to read more about the Recollection Wisconsin Digitization Initiative. We're taking applications for organizations and for students, so please feel free to pass that along. This is really for those organizations that have like boxes of stuff. They have a scanner and a computer, and they have a spot for a student to like sit and do the digitization. This is a student in the seat doing the digitization and description and getting into Recollection Wisconsin if that's appropriate. So this is the big part of our initiative to eliminate barriers to participation, because lots of places do not have the kind of labor that it takes to actually do the digitization. There's no cost there to the host sites. And when I say host site, I don't mean like students have to stay overnight. I just mean they're coming to the host site organization, once a week, twice a week for a semester to do scanning and description work. So not all organizations have the kind of labor that Tamara provides at the South Central Library System. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tamara to talk a little bit about what her experience has been like.
Okay, thank you, Kristen, and thank you everybody who's here on this nice Friday afternoon. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, like I said earlier, I am the digitization consultant for the South Central Library System, and I help our member libraries with their local history digitization projects. And I'm just going to describe the services I offer to help our member libraries get their collections in Recollection Wisconsin. You could check, if you're not a part of South Central, with your systems to see if they have services available that could help you with getting a collection started. I'll mention several years ago, some systems received scanning kits provided through the DPI for these type of projects. So also check with your system to see if they might have those kits available for you to use. If your system does not offer assistance, email Recollection Wisconsin, and they'll let you know what your options are and what steps to take to get started. And then now I will go over how SCLS as a system helps our member libraries get collections in Recollection Wisconsin. So South Central provides services to libraries, public libraries in 7 central Wisconsin counties. 24 SCLS member libraries have collections in Recollection Wisconsin, and you can see the list of libraries here. All of these libraries have followed the same general workflow. They're proof that it's possible to do this. Library staff, volunteers, or interns have worked on the projects, and some of the libraries have collaborated with local historical societies. Those type of projects can work out really nice. Each project is unique depending on who is working on it and what types of materials are being digitized. Therefore, projects are somewhat customized, but there's always that same general workflow that gets followed. So in the next few slides, I'll go over that workflow. Go ahead, Kristen. And all right, so as the digitization consultant, I will help with project planning. I provide digitization kits that have equipment and software in them and training on using the kits. This is a picture of 2 of the totes that our kits come in. Excuse me, the kits are only for use by library staff. They do have to stay at the library. And included with equipment, we give our libraries 3 external hard drives to save their materials on. They're provided with funding from the SCLS Foundation, and they're given 3 drives for 2 reasons. One is for backup purposes, and the other is just to aid in the workflow of sharing digitized materials between library staff working on the project and myself. I also provide metadata templates. We use Google Sheets for that, and then I'll provide training on completing metadata. And I also coordinate having a library's collection set up in Recollection, Wisconsin. Involved in the collection setup, I will gather details from the library and then use that information to fill out Recollection Wisconsin's official form, which is in Google. And that process is really simple from my end and the libraries. And then the Recollection Wisconsin administrators coordinate setting up Content DM with Milwaukee Public Library for us. And they also do website customizations for the library's homepage. That homepage is linked to the partner page that Kristen was showing, and I'll usually include a description of the library and the project, and then links to the library's collection of materials. And next slide. So those were all the pieces of the project that I help with. And then with my guidance, library staff, again, or volunteers or interns, whoever can work on the project, are responsible for managing the project. They'll do the planning and preparing, sorting and organizing, and obtaining copyright permissions if needed. They also do digitizing and create the metadata. And once all that's done, marketing and promoting the digital collection. Everyone has a lot going on, so it's totally understandable. Many other things might take priority over these projects, but I just encourage people to keep doing any pieces of the workflow that they can, when they can, and then bit by bit, it will get done. I will note too that even though we have these general workflows, there is a lot of flexibility in the projects. They can start, take a break, resume at any time. They can be long-term or short-term, focused on a single collection of materials, or just continually grow over time. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same person doing all of these steps. For example, if you have someone that prefers working with the physical materials, they could do the sorting and organizing. Someone who's more tech savvy could do the digitizing, and then maybe they could collaborate on creating the metadata. Just use people where their strengths and comfort levels are to get things done. Another example of workflow flexibility is that the digitizing and metadata could be done in the same session, or some people prefer to do a whole bunch of digitizing and then go back and create their metadata. I've had a few that even would rather create metadata first and then do the digitizing. So the order of all that makes no difference on my end. It all has to be done, but how a library gets there can be whatever works best for them. And next slide. So after everything's been digitized, materials have had the metadata created for them. I take those pieces and upload them to Content DM. For South Central's case, our member libraries do not need to worry about learning Content DM. I do all of that for them. From Content DM, as Kristen has explained, the materials are made available in Recollection Wisconsin and DPLA. And the way they go to being searchable is through that harvest process that she explained. A lot of that is behind the scenes efforts of various experts. Libraries don't necessarily get involved with the technical details at that point, nor do I. But grateful for all the people that make those pieces of the project happen. And then I will just mention the picture here. These are examples of formats that materials are available in Recollection Wisconsin from our member libraries. So there's documents, yearbooks, photographs, postcards, scrapbooks, clippings, newsletters, ephemera, and so on. Materials can be still images, audio, or video. So just if you have any of these types of materials in your library, maybe this could inspire you that these types of things can make really nice additions to Recollection Wisconsin. And the next slide. So I've listed here some benefits of participating. And when I first started on this slide, I had so many, the font had to get really small, and then that wasn't going to work out. So these are just a few of the highlights. So these benefits will apply whether it's to a system or a library. By Recollection Wisconsin existing and from the expertise and efforts of the administrators, board members, steering committee members, it definitely takes a team, but all of that makes it possible for me to pass these benefits on to our libraries. Recollection Wisconsin administrators, so mostly, well, I think they all are WiL staff. So previously Emily Fotenhauer, who I have to mention, and then Kristen, Andy, all of them are always professional, encouraging, patient, and cheerfully there to help. As Kristen mentioned, they provide collection curation, practitioner support, and guidance. They provide training, tools like the Content DM platform, and resources like their toolkit. I use the toolkit often myself and recommend it to everyone. If there's anything you're wondering about, odds are extremely good that it will be tips about doing it in that toolkit. They are also always prepared to help troubleshoot, problem solve, and tackle any challenges that come up. They network with experts from historical societies, museums, universities, archives, and libraries in Wisconsin and nationally. So they are continually growing their knowledge, and then they'll share all that information. They innovate, adapt to meet best practices, current best practices, and set higher standards. And as Kristen mentioned too, they do a lot of marketing and outreach to increase awareness and use of Recollection Wisconsin. So they have e-newsletters, they present at conferences and such to spread the word. Having materials available in Recollection Wisconsin increases their discoverability, searchability, browsability, and accessibility. A lot of attention is paid to making it a positive user experience. As a DPLA hub, materials are searchable in both portals. So I see that as a bonus. You do the work once and then all of your stuff is discovered from 2 different places. It's also neat how related materials provided by many partners can be discovered in a single place, as Kristen has shown you. And then one of my favorite things, it also makes linking related materials together. So for example, a picture of someone might be linked through the metadata fields to a letter they had written. They might not even be pieces of information that are at the same institution, but through Recollection Wisconsin, you can see all that in one place. And it's just so much fun to see those pieces of information come together. If all of these materials just lived on individual libraries' own websites or were not available online at all, they would likely never get discovered in a way that Recollection Wisconsin makes possible. And best of all, no cost to participate. So that makes all of this even better. Let's see here. Yeah, let's go to that next slide. So this is a dashboard that we used at South Central. It was created by previous data services person, Jody Hosley. It's now updated monthly and maintained by our current data services person, Tim Drexler. We get all of the data from Content DM. According to the data, SCLS member libraries items have been viewed 1.8 million times. So I don't mean to sound conceited, but I think that's pretty impressive. And it just shows that these materials are being viewed and used, and this number would likely not be possible if collections were not in Recollection Wisconsin. People might miss out on discovering and getting access to these materials. An example of a use of the data on these dashboard, or a way that our libraries use this data, is they will share it at their board meetings and kind of use it as a justification for time spent on these projects. Another use example is it can also inspire more marketing efforts to get the views to grow faster. On that note, even if you don't want to add materials to Recollection Wisconsin, please share the word about it. Share it with your staff, patrons, friends, family, anybody you talk to. Just talk about Recollection Wisconsin. Everybody can find something of interest on the website. You can add links and logos to your library's website too. Whether you're a contributor or a user, it's just a fabulous resource. And selfishly, I'll say if you want to spend time searching South Central member libraries collections, you could help us get to 2 million faster, and that would be pretty neat. So to wrap up what I have to say, I just hope that seeing our workflows, yeah, the next slide's fine, either one. I just hope that seeing our workflows and learning how our member libraries have become partners inspires you to either become a partner or at least a user. And my experience sometimes not knowing where to start has stopped people from beginning a project. And between the Recollection Wisconsin administrators, the toolkit, maybe your system staff, or just seeing our examples of workflows can help guide you to knowing where to begin. And after you begin, next thing you know, things are getting done. Fear stops people sometimes too. As long as you don't ever hurt a physical item, don't worry. Scanning can be redone, metadata can be tweaked if it needs to be, but as long as you're doing something, you'll get there. So don't let the worry of not getting it right stop you from starting. All of our member libraries that have collections in Recollection Wisconsin are proof that these projects are possible and they can do it, so can you. And then lastly, I'll just say, and Kristen mentioned this, that I do feel lucky to be in a state that offers a program like Recollection Wisconsin. Not all states have access to something comparable as this, so we are very fortunate that we have these tools and resources and can share our history in this way. So that is all I have. So thank you for listening to me, and then back to you, Kristen.
Thanks, Tamara. So, like I said, Tamara is like a Recollection Wisconsin super user. So thank you for sharing all of that. That data dashboard that she has is gorgeous. It's just beautiful. Please do connect with us by following us on Facebook or sign up to receive our newsletters, which come out quarterly. And now I'm just going to ask for questions. I'm going to stop sharing. Along with questions, I also would love to hear, we've got like a nice conversation size group here today. If there are, Wendy, I'll get to your question in just a second. If there are like projects you're thinking about, digitization projects you're thinking about, or Recollection Wisconsin projects you're thinking about, I'd love to hear what you're thinking about, what kinds of projects are on the horizon, even if you don't have questions about them. And Wendy, are there any partners or member libraries for Northern Wisconsin, like Vilas County area? How would content from museums be shared if digitized? So those are two separate questions. So where is Vilas County? I know this. It's northwest or northeast or north central. In any case, I would look at the map probably, which I will go grab. Hang on just a second. I think we do have some content partners in Vilas County, but I'm just not sure off the top of my head. And then your other question, how would content from museums be shared if digitized? That would be, so if the museum doesn't have their own content management system, thanks, Andy. I knew Andy would go looking for it. if you don't have your own content management system, then we would provide like some information on how to do that digitization in-house with your own scanner, or if you wanted to use a digitization vendor. And then we would teach you how to put all of those digital items into Content DM. And then we upload, we teach you how to upload them into Content DM and we harvest from there. Does that kind of answer your question? That's the workflow it would be for a small organization, which I think is probably what you're asking about for a museum in Vilas County. Another option could be, like Tamara said, a lot of times historical societies or museums will partner with their local public library, and that can be a really expedient way to get work done. So a lot of times those public libraries have digitization equipment. They might already also be a content partner. They might be participating in Recollection Wisconsin already. So they might already have a workflow set up for that. So I would highly recommend getting in touch with the local public library. Really good questions. Anybody else want to chime in?
Hi, this is Wendy from the Leicester Public Library in Vesper, and I've been in contact with Tamara. We are going to start trying to weed through some of the stuff that's been taking a home in our library, in our history room, and try to get some semblance to it and some order and get it to where people can look at it and there's some rhyme or reason to it. But it's going to be a big project for sure.
Absolutely. And tell me again where you're from, Lesper or Vesper?
Vesper.
Okay, got
Vesper.
it. Yep. I was going to say Leicester. We have 2 Leicester libraries as content partners, but Vesper we do not yet. Okay, got it.
Yep.
How much? Oh, go ahead.
I'm looking forward to working on that with you, Wendy. Thank you.
This is Wendy Newport from Vilas County, from up in Boulder Junction, and I see that she just put in that Eagle River Society will soon be joining, which would be great. It's still about 70 miles away, but it's all good. Our Boulder Junction Historic Society has about 7 members, so we are not a big enough place to do a lot of digitizing, but we're working on our 100th birthday coming up in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so we are not only looking to figure out how we can implement thank you implement some of the things that we're going to be needing to help with that celebration, but ways that we can distribute information to others too. So that might be an opportunity. We work very closely with our public librry. We do not have we don't even have our own website. So, we are little, and a almost non-functioning Facebook page. So, yes, it's all a start. Every moment that we learn more and try to get things out there is a start. So
absolutely.
I will watch to see what Eagle River is doing, and hopefully that will. So Land O'Lakes is a content partner in Crandon. Okay, Tomahawk.
Yep.
Okay, well, I can definitely. Yes. So Sherry Sanderson, from the library, helps us work with a lot of things. So
nice.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely. And I would definitely say, Wendy, look at the Recollection Wisconsin Digitization Initiative. It's that student program. So the reason Eagle River Historical Society is coming on board, or the reason they heard about us, is through this internship program. And so here's what they're doing. So the director over there, he has stuff. He has boxes of, these are going to be pamphlets of historical pamphlets of the area's resorts, like resort community. And he has lots of stuff and it's well organized and it's ready to be digitized, but he doesn't really have space, nor does he have a great scanning setup for a student to sit there and do the work. Plus, Eagle River Historical Society is like way up north, so that's a long way for a student from Madison or Milwaukee to travel. And then we heard from the Nicolay Federated Library System that they have space and a scanner, but no stuff to digitize. And so Eagle River Historical Society's materials are going to go to the Nicolay Federated Library System office in Green Bay, and the student is going to digitize those materials there. Even though they're outside the geographical area of the Nicolay Federated Library System, it works out. And so because this is a pilot program, we're really open to like just doing what it takes to make those kinds of partnerships work. So if you need a student to come work at the Boulder Junction Public Library, Sherry, and what they're going to be working on is the Historical Society materials, like that, I think that would be great. And you all should look at the application to be a host site. We're taking applications on a rolling basis. So so yeah, give us a shout on that. It sounds like you've got some really cool stuff ready, you know, that you're working on.
Kristen, I'm going to interrupt. Do you want to talk about office hours real fast, and I'll find a link for signing up?
Thank you. That's a wonderful idea. Andy handles a lot of the really heavy lifting, which is like on the tech side, and also the communications. And so she's really good at helping me remember the things that we need to communicate. So we hold office hours, open office hours once a month. They're on the like first or second Thursday of the month. She's going to grab a sign up, and anybody can come to those and sign up for a half an hour time period with us to just talk about their project, ask questions. We can provide advice. If you have a specific like copyright or scanning kind of question, we can just talk about that for half an hour. And if those office hours don't work for you, just send us an email I'll put this in here. I'm happy to set up other time with you too. Thanks for the nudge, Andy. That's a good call.
This is Sherry Sanderson. I see
Sherry.
that Blaze from Winchester, that's 15-20 minutes from us in Boulder Junction. So glad that our whole area is getting on this bandwagon. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, yeah. I know, we're just in love with Blaze Burton's name. Blaze Burton from Winchester. It's just delightful. Yeah, the person who we have working on the Recollection Wisconsin Digitization Initiative, her name is Vicki Tobias, if any of you have met or worked with her before. And she's really doing some pretty hardcore like outreach into areas that don't often get represented by these kinds of efforts. And Vilas County, way up north, that's definitely where we're looking. Because if you look at that map of Recollection Wisconsin content partners, there's definitely big gaps in there. Those are some gaps that were identified. Thanks for coming, Rachel. Feel free to shoot me an email if you've got any questions. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? We've got a few minutes, so if you've got digital projects questions, we're here for you.
So this is Wendy again from Boulder Junction. We are working with the Clio group, creating walking tours, digital walking tours.
Yeah, they're great.
Is that something that information that's created there can be linked?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I wonder that myself. It would not be exactly the same format, but potentially. So here's what I'm thinking about that. And Andy, I don't think I've even talked to you about this before, but in the Clio app, Jim Bokern and, oh, what is that other wonderful lady's name from the Eagle River Historical Society? I don't remember her name. Anyways, they're working on creating a ton of really great walking tours in the like Northwoods areas. If they have items that are recorded, like they have a little video or audio that's recorded kind of for each stop, and they could figure out a way to put those all into one audio, and they wanted to upload that into Recollection Wisconsin with all of the text as metadata, we could probably do something like that. I don't want to overpromise anything, but that's
All right.
sort
It's
of where
just
my
that,
brain
you know,
goes.
with us now working on that project, you know, that's a similar information gathering
Yes.
technique that we're using. you know, if that would be something that would, you know, we're not having to duplicate the work.
That's a really good point, Wendy. I really, I heard them talk about it at a gathering several months ago, and I think I'm going to reach out to Jim and whatever her name is, and talk to them about this, because if nothing else, maybe we could figure out a workflow of some kind, and we could share that with the folks who are working on CLIO walking tours. That's a really
That
good
would be
point.
great, because that's,
Mhm.
you know, that we started that was one of the first things that we chose to do for our 100th anniversary, is to,
Yeah.
you know, identify what we have, what we wanted to put in, and be able to give people, you know, these little snippets of information.
Mhm.
So that's what we've been focusing on right now.
Mhm.
So, you know, when Sherry mentioned this, I'm like, oh my God, not another thing, another hat to wear.
It's just getting all your information out there. So yeah, I
So
understand.
if I could make one hat fix two jobs, that would be awesome.
That's a real good point. Yep, I'll put it on my list. That's a really good
Thank you very much.
idea. Thanks, Wendy. Well, keep in touch, you all. You know, feel free to email us if you've got thoughts or questions. We really appreciate you coming. For everybody who's going to watch this recording later, same, get in touch with us if there's anything we can do. And thank you again, Tamara, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thanks, Andy, for running this for everybody. Nice to chat with you all.